John Lusk here of Lusk Archery Adventures. Today I'm excited to be testing two premium broadheads in a head-to-head broadhead battle comparison. These are going to be the German Kinetics Silver Flame XL, 125 grains. And I might want to add, this is the real German Kinetics Silver Flame. It's not the Alaska Bow Hunting Supply. There's quite a difference between the two. This is by far the better of those two. And I'm going to be comparing it to the Iron Will Outfitters 125 grain solid version with the bleeders. And so if you look at these two heads, you see they look quite different. But let me get into a bit of specs before we get into the actual test. The cutting diameter of the German Kinetics is 1.5 inches, you see, and there's no bleeders. German Kinetics doesn't believe in bleeders. They just want to make that big slice like that. The Iron Will Outfitters does have bleeders. The total diameter right here is 1 1/116 of an inch, quite a bit smaller. And the total cut of that bleeder is 0.75 inches. So the total tissue cut of the two, the German Kinetics is 1.5 inches. The Iron Will is 1.81 inches. So quite a bit more cut, although this will make a wider hole in that regard. It's interesting to see that. And so then in terms of the material of the steel, there's quite a difference there too. The German Kinetics uses really fine stainless steel, 440B stainless steel, that they treat to a 55, 57 Rockwell hardness. And then they use an aluminum ferrule, 70, 75 T6 aluminum ferrule. The Iron Will Outfitters uses an A2 tool steel for their blades. And A2 tool steel, and the way they have this proprietary cryogenic process to treat it, to temper it, they get it to a Rockwell hardness of 60. So 55, 57 versus 60. Now you may think, oh, that's too brittle. Well, it would be too brittle if you treated this to a 60, the stainless steel. But with A2, you can treat it to a 60 Rockwell hardness because one of its other properties is it has incredible resistance to impact. Matter of fact, if you compare what's called the Charpy V-notch scores between the two types of steel, that's their resistance to impact. The A2 steel is about 2 to 3 times as resistant to impact as this stainless steel is. And what that means is when it encounters a tough surface or tough medium like bone or something like that, the A2 steel is going to be much less resistant to that impact. It's much less likely to dent, to bend, or to have the edge kind of softened or dulled than would be the stainless steel. And then it also uses, on this solid version of the 125 grain, they use a titanium ferrule, grade 5 titanium. If you go to the vented version, then they use a steel ferrule, but in the solid, to gain some weight, they use that grade 5 titanium. So you notice that both of them are sharpened all the way around on the back edges. They're both like extremely sharp out of the box. In terms of resharpening, both of them are designed to replace the blades or to resharpen them. It's a lot easier to resharpen these, the Iron Wills, because of the straight angles. Even though there's a few different angles, it's easier to sharpen them because the blades are straight. Sometimes it can be difficult to sharpen a curvature like that. So what we're going to be doing for the test is we're going to shoot them into some uniform mediums. And if you watched my test before, let me just be the first to note, I know these are not animals. And you go, well, thank goodness we're not hunting wood or something like that. Yeah, I get it. But to have data, when you're selecting a broadhead, if you're like serious about it, you want as many data points as you can get to compare the heads. You would read the specs that they put on the back of the package and so forth. I'm just going to give you some more data points by shooting them into MDF. I have 1/2 inch MDF. I have the first layer that has like this rubber foam mat over it. I use this for all my testing. And I'm going to see how deeply these two penetrate in that and how the edges hold up through that. It's kind of like bone to see how well they hold up through that. Then I have some other tests that I'm going to put them through as well. And to do these tests, I'm going to be using my standard Bishop Archery FOC King arrows, which are just incredible. I got a nocturnal on the end, so you can see that. You can see it in the flight and in the wood and so forth. I'm going to be shooting them through my new Bowtech SR6 at 72 pounds on the comfort setting. Let's see how they do. First, I'm going to shoot the Iron Will Outfitters. Now I'm going to shoot the German Kinetics Silver Flame. So here they both penetrated through the mat and through that first. So here they penetrated, they both went through that mat and the first layer of MDF. And you can see they both blew through that, obviously. And then into the second layer, they both embedded in the second layer. You can see how much they embedded there. And if you look around the back of the second layer, you can see that the Iron Will poked through the second layer, whereas the German Kinetics Silver Flame did not make it through the second layer at all. It just embedded in the second layer right there. So the penetration edge, while it's close, clearly goes to the Iron Will, which is interesting given that it has such a larger amount of tissue being cut, 0.3 inches greater tissue being cut. And in the last board in which they embedded, you can see the holes that they put in that last board. You see the Iron Will went in quite a bit deeper. It got up to the ferrule and made a bigger hole with the ferrule there, whereas the German Kinetics, just the tip went in there. In terms of the blades themselves, in the edge retention, you can see it was still pretty strong because of my blood right there as I was pulling them out. But the edge retention was fantastic. I mean, it was really impressive. I looked really closely under all different kinds of light and tested them by shaving them across my thumbnail, and I could just not see any signs of either of these getting it all dulled by going through this wood. Maybe I'd see something if I looked through a microscope. I've seen the Iron Will put through a microscope before, and it's like really impressive where there's a 200 times magnification of the blade edge. But just with the naked eye and with a little bit of magnification and just with feeling it and cutting, I can't see any signs of wear. They both held up really well. Now I'm going to get to shoot both of these heads downrange a bit. I'm here at 60 yards, and I'll go first with the German Kinetics, and then I'll go with the Iron Will. And let's see how they do at 60 yards. Pardon the sound on this. I know it's not so great. There's a lot of traffic around here, but we're going to do the best we can. So here are both the German Kinetics and the Iron Will at 80 yards. I'm still adjusting my sight tape, so that's probably why they're hitting low, but good grief. That's a good group, even if it's just 2 arrows. Here again, you see a pretty good grouping. Now I'm going to do the zero penetration test on this cinder block. And I'm going to shoot both of these heads into the cinder block with this mammoth arrow. I wouldn't do this with a normal arrow, but I know these arrows will hold up to this. And again, I know that we don't hunt cinder blocks, but this is one more data point to show the overall structural integrity and the blade durability of these heads. First, we'll go with the Iron Will. You can see the knock fly right off of that upon impact. Here you see how the head buried itself right into that concrete. Wow. Actually, really buried it in. Like King Arthur, trying to pull it out. There we go. So it put quite a hole in the cinder block right there. Okay, now we'll go with German Kinetics Silver Flame. This one too stuck right in there, which is impressive. Although you can see the bend right there in that aluminum ferrule. Now, it's always better that something bends than breaks. You know, in bow hunting, if it bends, it's still staying in there cutting, and it's still penetrating. If it breaks off, it's no good. So that's not terrible by any stretch. And again, it's hard to get it out. Here we go. You can see the hole. So you can see both heads penetrated really well into the cinder block, but that wasn't really the purpose of the test. The purpose of the test was to test the structural integrity and blade integrity of these two heads. You can see for the Silver Flame right there at the base of kind of the lattice there in the vented head, you see that broke through. Yeah, right there you get a good angle on it. That broke apart. You can see the blade edges themselves got quite a bit of nicks and gouges in them, but you know, actually they held up pretty well. And then you see though the aluminum ferrule bent quite a bit right there. That's probably what caused that blade to break right there, was the bend in the ferrule. The iron will, the ferrule held up perfectly well. It still spins true actually, and the blades held up very well. You can see the edges there. There's a few little tiny nicks. Those can actually be sharpened out. The very tip broke off there, but man, this head held up quite well.